So I need your help on this one. Donald Trump wants to outlaw flag burning. The Supreme Court, and I think most people recognize that there may be some constitutional issues concerning free speech with that. So even if I dig into it and read the executive order, some of this stuff doesn't, it flies over my head. So is there any way this could be constitutional? What's he trying to do here?
It would be very hard to get that to work. Actually, the case, believe it or not, that outlaws or that makes it First Amendment protected activity is actually a case out of Dallas, and it was at I believe it was at the Republican convention in 1984, which happened in Dallas. A man was arrested under a Texas law for burning a flag. It went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court in 1984 said, no, this is protected speech, and you can't make it a crime to do that. So there's binding precedent on point. Then again, you've had Roe v. Wade, which was overturned. Supreme Court precedents get overturned. I don't know that this is going to be the court that you want to do that with. They tend to be sort of libertarian, if you will. And if anything, they kind of take a more hardline stance on the Constitution, including speech. The Fifth Circuit in New Orleans is the most conservative court, probably federal court, that's out there. And they just told Texas A&M, West Texas A&M, that they have to have drag shows on campus.
Dang.
So I don't know that they get very far.
Okay. Well, is he trying some other angle? Because I know he's not going to just write on a piece of paper, it's illegal to burn an American flag, because there's going to be all kinds of obvious exceptions to that. Like when a flag is retired from service, isn't it burned as part of the honorable procedure or proper protocol or whatever? But also, I imagine Donald Trump's not worried if you have like an American flag sticker and you burn it in your own backyard away from the prying eyes of the general public. But is there some way he could sort of wrap this into, like, maybe if the flag is burnt and incites a riot, that could retroactively be looked at and said to be illegal?
Well, if you start a riot or you do some act that could start a riot, that would be conduct and not necessarily speech. There's a bigger issue here and there's a bigger problem here, and that is really any criminal statute or any criminal infraction, anything that winds you up in jail, really has to be created by Congress. You have civil law, where you're fighting what?
That's that's my next question. Even if he does find a way that's constitutional, shouldn't it go through Congress first?
Yes, that's exactly right. See, you're a step ahead of me, James, as always. And what in civil law, right, when you're fighting over money, a lot of what you call torts, right, truck accidents, car accidents, negligence, that's based on what's called common law. And those are things that we imported from England or France or from wherever we got our laws from in the 16, 17, 1800s. Criminal cases always have to be statutory because you've got a due process right to know what's legal and illegal. So the President of the United States cannot, by executive order, make a crime or something that could be jailable. And I'd hesitate to think that he could even make something that would have civil penalties as well, because that's a taking also. So I think it's good politics and good optics for him. I don't know that it works.
All right, we're talking with Jeremy Rosenthal, TexasDefenseFirm.com. Now, I think he does have the right and doesn't even have to go through Congress if he wants to, like, revoke visas or green cards or residence permits or, for people who are foreigners and not citizens to use that against them in deciding whether or not they're allowed to stay. Is that legal?
He's got a lot better chance of being successful with that because immigration is controlled by the federal government, because ICE is an entity that's controlled by the executive branch. The way to think about our government is literally the executive branch. He executes our laws. He enforces our laws. That's what an executive is. That's what the framers really intended. You guys over there in the courts, you guys interpret. You guys over here, you pass the laws, and your job is to execute the laws. It's turned into obviously there's practical things. There's foreign policy. There's the military. And so his powers are obviously more extensive than that. But ICE would be a lot more close to enforcing laws that are already on the books than really any of the other topics. So I think the answer to that is yes.
All right. Well, good chat, Jeremy Rosenthal. Do you think a year from now flag burning will still be legal, or will there be some changes to it?
I think it will still be protected by the First Amendment. Texas, I think, I think the statute is still on the books. It's just you have a First Amendment defense to it, and it wouldn't be prosecuted. It's just the same as in abortion in Roe versus Wade. That was on the books in Texas, still on the books. When the Supreme Court comes out, I don't know that we take it off the books. It's just sort of a nullity. And then if the court ever permits it again,
did you say a nullity?
A nullity, right? I mean, it's there, but look, to repeal a law, the legislature's got to repeal it, and the legislature in Texas just kind of, when it comes to abortion in 1972, 1973, when Roe gets enacted, this happens a lot. A lot of times they'll kind of cross their arms and say fiddle-dee-dee, well, we're not going to take it off the books, even though the Supreme Court says we can't ever enforce this, you just can't make us erase it. And nobody really cares. So you do have laws that are on the books that have been overruled or have been just unconstitutional. Now, most of the time, the legislature is going to fix it. There's a statute in Texas. It's I'm going to ridiculously dork out on you, James. Are you ready?
You got 30 seconds. Yeah,
30 seconds. Chapter 4207 is harassment, which is a lot of speech-related conduct, a lot of conduct-related conduct, making a phone ring repeatedly, threatening messages, very, very intensive. And the courts go in there and hold that constitutional, unconstitutional all the time. They go back and forth. And the legislature does go back and fix it. That's what ought to happen and typically does happen. But we have a lot of dead wood in there.
All right. Well, good chat. I learned a little bit today. Thank you, Jeremy Rosenthal. You can find him at texasdefensefirm.com. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.